Hello everyone and welcome to another tutorial on the Internet of Things playlist. As you know, we have been looking at different cloud platforms and different IoT devices and different sensors and how to send data from these IoT devices to different cloud platforms. We've looked at GCP, we've looked at AWS, we've looked at Azure, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at another cloud platform which is Thingsboard. In the previous tutorial I looked at how to send data from Raspberry Pi to Thingsboard Cloud, and in this tutorial I'll be looking at how to set up Thingsboard to run locally on your Raspberry Pi without needing internet connectivity. And you can send data from your DHT sensor data or any other sensor you have to your local Thingsboard cloud platform on your Raspberry Pi, running locally on your Raspberry Pi without needing internet connectivity. So that's what we are going to be doing, and it's going to be informative and also it's going to be awesome. So before you go, let's subscribe to this channel and don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and I'm going to very much appreciate it. So let's start the tutorial, and first we're going to start with the hardware connection.
So now let me walk you through the hardware connection. Here I have my DHT, and I have my resistor. It's a 10K resistor. I have my breadboard here, and I have my Raspberry Pi here. So as you can see, I'm using a Raspberry Pi 4 for this tutorial. I just got this newly. So I've already set up my connections. I've connected the jumper wires to the Raspberry Pi. So this is the first one. This is connected to pin 1 of the Raspberry Pi, and this is going to be the data pin. It's connected to pin 4 on the Raspberry Pi, that is GPIO4, not actually pin 4 but GPIO4, and this is connected to pin number 39, which is a ground pin. So don't forget, this is pin 1, this is GPIO4. If you have to count, GPIO4 falls to pin number 7. So this is pin number 7, which is GPIO4, and this is pin number 39, which is a ground pin. So I'm going to plug in. Let me put this to one side. I'm going to plug in my DHT sensor A, and in this sensor, this is pin 1, pin 2, 3, and 4. So my DHT sensor will come here, and I have my 10K resistor in between pin 1 and pin 2. So I'll just go back and plug this in. So I have my 10K resistor in between pin 1 and pin 2. So as I have here, this is VCC pin, which is pin 1, 3 volts on the Raspberry Pi. It comes to pin 1. And this is the data pin, which is GPIO4, pin number 7 on the Raspberry Pi. It comes to pin 2. So pin 3 will be left unconnected, while the ground pin will go to the last pin, which is pin 4. So this is the whole setup. So I'm using 3 pin, don't forget, pin 1, pin 7, and pin 39. So this is my ground. This is the VCC, which is pin number 1, 3 volts on the Raspberry Pi, and this is GPIO4, which is pin 7 on the Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to connect this to my computer now and do all necessary setup. So I'll be connecting my Raspberry Pi to my computer via headless, so that a lot of things will be easy for me to do. I'll just slot this in and connect this to my computer. Then I'll power on the Raspberry Pi.
Alright, after setting up the hardware, the next thing you want to do is to set up the Raspberry Pi to run the Thingsboard Cloud local server. Even though after setting up the local server, we won't need internet connectivity to send data from our Raspberry Pi to the server, but before we can set up the local server on our Raspberry Pi, we need to grab some dependencies and also some packages online. So make sure your Raspberry Pi is connected to the internet for now. After we are done setting it up, you might remove your internet from the Raspberry Pi and you can run your Raspberry Pi server locally. So I'm going to be browsing on my Raspberry Pi, and if you check the link in the description below, there's a link to the project repository on GitHub. So here I have this README file that contains all the things that you need to do to set up Thingsboard Cloud on your Raspberry Pi. So the first thing you have to do is to install the Java 11 Open JDK. So you can just come to the project repository and grab this. So we're going to be running update, and also we are going to be installing Open JDK. So you can copy this out, and I open the terminal and paste this in. Most of the time this step is not necessary because it comes by default on your Raspberry Pi, but just to make sure everything's okay, you can still run it. So for now it's running the update. Okay, we can see here that when we want to run the second command, which is sudo apt install openjdk11, it says the following package will automatically install and are no longer required. So most of the time this first step is not necessary because it comes by default on your Raspberry Pi. So after that, the same thing, you have to configure your operating system to use JDK by default. So you can grab this particular line. So I'll just copy this and paste it in the terminal. Again, this also is usually by default, so sometimes you might not need to run this, but make sure everything's okay. So I'm going to try to run this also, and it says nothing to configure because it's already activated by default. So now that we are sure that Java has been installed, we can run this command to show the Java version that we have, and we have that OpenJDK has been installed. So that's the first thing you have to do, and take note, as I mentioned, most of the time this first step is not necessary. It's usually installed by default on your Raspberry Pi, but in case you have done some settings, you might have to install them again. So after that, you have to install Thingsboard. We are going to be grabbing the code from the internet, and we are going to be installing it using wget. So now in step 2, you can just copy out this command and paste it out in the Raspberry Pi terminal. And don't forget, all this README is in the project repository. So after you are done with this, then the next thing is to install the Thingsboard as a surface. So make sure this is done downloading, then just grab this sudo dpkg install Thingsboard. So copy this out and again paste it in the terminal. So now we are done with step 2 of installing Thingsboard. So the next thing we want to do is to set up our database. And the best database that is recommended by Thingsboard is to use PostgreSQL. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be downloading PostgreSQL on our Raspberry Pi, and we're going to be setting it up to work with Thingsboard. So just move to step 3 of the README file, and again we're going to be grabbing the PostgreSQL file. So again, copy on this particular link, the first link in the first command in step 3. I'm going to copy this and paste it over on my Raspberry Pi terminal. So paste this thing and proceed to the next command. You can just grab the old thing. So here we are simply adding content to our system. So grab this also and paste it on the terminal. So this is done. So the next thing, after grabbing all the necessary keys for the PostgreSQL database, so the next thing is to run these 3 commands. You can run sudo apt update, sudo apt while install PostgreSQL, and also we are going to start it. So you can grab this also and paste it in. So after that, I'm going to run the last command, which is sudo service PostgreSQL start. So I'll copy this out and paste it in here. So the service has been started. So the next thing is to set up our password for our database. Any password that you're using here, take note of it very well. We're going to be using it again later in this guide. So now proceed to the next command, and don't copy all of this at once, just copy it one by one. So copy the first one, sudo su postgres. So copy this and paste it over in the command prompt. And now you can see that the prompt has changed from Raspberry Pi to Postgres at Raspberry Pi. So we're now in the Postgres SQL prompt. So copy this, which is the second command to set up a password. So what we're trying to do here is simply to set up a password for our database. So now the Postgres is waiting for a command. So now we're going to be typing the third one, which is \password, to tell Postgres that we want to type a password. So it's going to ask, enter a new password for user Postgres. So I'm going to just call my admin. So you can change this later. Again, I'm going to enter it again and call it admin also. So once I'm done, you can just put \q and it will take you back to Postgres terminal. So now to return back to the Raspberry Pi terminal, which is what we have here, you can simply press Ctrl D on your command prompt, Ctrl D. So now we've logged out of Progress database and we are now back in our command prompt. So after that, we're going to be creating a database. So simply grab this. Again, you can simply type this out one by one. So try not to grab the whole 3 command at once. So copy the first command and paste this in. So it's going to be asking for the password that we used. So yeah, and what I used was admin. So now it's asking for the next command, then grab this next line, which is create database Thingsboard. So you can call your database anything, but I'm just going to call mine Thingsboard. So paste this in. Okay, so I think I've already have one created that is called Thingsboard. So if you are setting up for the first time, you shouldn't get this error. So I'm just going to leave mine like that, and to move back to the Postgres command prompt, so simply type \q, and now we are in our normal command prompt. So don't forget, if you are setting up for the first time, you should not get this error, and if you are getting this error, simply give another name to your Thingsboard database. So after we are done setting that up, the next thing, which is step 4, is to configure Thingsboard. So we are going to be editing a configuration file and we're going to be pasting this whole thing there. So now just come here and you can grab this once and paste it in your command prompt, the terminal, and here you have this. So move straight to the last line and grab this whole thing and paste it here. As you can see, I already pasted mine here. So just paste to the last line of the configuration file. So I already pasted mine, which is db configuration, as we can see here. So what you need to do here is to come to Spring data source password and type in the password that you declared for your database. As you can see, it's without any quotation or anything. It's just the pure password, which is admin. Don't forget, don't put any quotation or anything. Just put admin or whatever the password is. So after that, we are going to click Ctrl X to save and Y to confirm it. So there's nothing much to do in step 5. Step 5 is usually by default and automatically configured. So you move straight to step 6. And if you are running on a very low Raspberry Pi, I'm using a Raspberry Pi 4 with 4 gig RAM. So I don't need to do step 6. It's majorly to optimize your Raspberry Pi to work if it's a lower RAM Raspberry Pi, so that all the Thingsboard configuration will run smoothly on it. But since I'm using a 4 gig RAM Raspberry Pi, I'm just skip over step 6 and move to step 7. But if you're using a Raspberry Pi of 1 gig or lesser, you can run step 6. And if you have a much more higher RAM, just move straight to step 7. So in step 7, we're going to be executing this script to set up our Thingsboard. So you grab this and simply paste this in the terminal. Okay, sorry. I grab the comment along with the code, so I'll just grab the command without the comment and paste it in. So take note, this particular command might take a couple of seconds before it finishes running. So just hold on. It's going to be doing all the setups that we need. So as you can see, it's still running. So once the command is done running, so you can just proceed over to step 8 and grab the last command, which is to start the Thingsboard service. So again, I'm going to paste this in my terminal and run this. So now this will not give you any output, so it's just to start the Thingsboard local server. So this particular command, which is the last command, the command at step 8, you might need to be running this every time you want to be using your Thingsboard locally. So just take note, you don't need to run any of this from step 1 to step 7. Once you're doing it once, that is all. But step 8 might have to be doing it whenever you are logging into your Thingsboard cloud service. So with that, we are done with everything involving setting up Thingsboard locally on a Raspberry Pi. So now I'm going to disconnect my internet. I'll just come over here and turn this off. So now I've disconnected my internet, and to access the web UI of Thingsboard platform, so I can just grab this. So after pasting in this command, you might have to wait up to 2 minutes before you start the local server. So after waiting for like 2 minutes, so grab this, which is localhost address, and paste it into the web browser. Don't forget, I'm already disconnected from the internet, and here I have the Thingsboard local server running locally on my Raspberry Pi. So the next thing is to sign in using the username and password. And if you check the README file towards the end, this is the login credentials into the Thingsboard platform. So if you are logging in as an admin, you simply grab this, and the password is sysadmin by default. And if you are logging in as a tenant, you can grab this as the email, and the password is tenant by default. You can change this later in your settings. And also, if you are logging in as a customer, you can grab this and also paste in customer as the default password. So since we are going to be creating a new device and we are going to be provisioning it, so we are going to be logging in as tenant, not as administrator. So copy this and paste it in mail, and the password is tenant by default, and then click on the login. So, and here we are on our Thingsboard local server. If you check my previous tutorials on how to set up Thingsboard on the cloud, you can see we have the same dashboard that we have on the cloud, and this in this case is running locally on our Raspberry Pi. So everything from here is the same as what we did while setting up Thingsboard cloud in the previous tutorials, but in the code we have to change the address from cloud.thingsboard to our local address. So with this, we are done setting up Raspberry Pi to run Thingsboard cloud local server. So next, we are going to be setting up our DHT 11 sensor data, and we are going to be sending the data to Thingsboard cloud. I'm going to be setting up my Raspberry Pi to read DHT 11 sensor data, which are temperature and humidity. Before we can successfully read the temperature and humidity from DHT 11, we have to set up our Raspberry Pi. And in this tutorial, I'm going to be using the Adafruit CircuitPython library to get this done. So, to install the library, for DHT 11 on Raspberry Pi, just come to your browser. Here I'm using Chromium on my Raspberry Pi, and you can search for Adafruit DHT Raspberry Pi setup. So if you scroll down, just click on Python setup DHT humidity sensing on Raspberry Pi or BigBone. So I'm going to click on this link, and on this link we are going to see instruction and details on how we can set up a Raspberry Pi to successfully read temperature and humidity from DHT 11. So the first thing we need to do is to set up our Linux board, which is a Raspberry Pi, to use CircuitPython libraries. So scroll down and click on this link, which is set up your Linux board for using CircuitPython libraries. So on this page, we're going to be setting up our Raspberry Pi to use CircuitPython libraries. So the first thing we need to do is to install the setup tools. So click on this copy text. I won't be typing this out on my terminal. I'll just click on copy, and I'm going to open the terminal and paste in the code. So this is successfully done. Again, I'm going to scroll down and grab the script and run it on my terminal. So it's asking, so click, just type in Y to confirm. So while waiting for this, I'll just come back to this page. So after running this, we are done setting up a Raspberry Pi to use CircuitPython. So let me go back to my terminal to see the updates. It's definitely going to get stuck here. So to just save you the time, you can press Ctrl C to cancel the operation. So with this, we are good and we can continue. So I'll just go back to this page and click on the back button to go back to the original web page. So I'm done with this step, which is setting your Linux board for using CircuitPython libraries. So I just need to grab some CircuitPython DHT library here to finish setting up my Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to grab this, which is pip install Adafruit CircuitPython DHT. So copying this, I'll come back to my terminal and paste it in. So, and lastly, I'll grab it, which is sudo apt get install libgpiod. So again, I'm going to copy this and paste it right into my terminal. So with this, we are done setting up your Raspberry Pi to read DHT sensor data. So to test, I'm going to copy this code and run it on my Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to copy this and open Tiny. So I open the Tiny Python IDE and paste this in. So we need to do some setup to make it work. So first I'm using DHT11, so I'm going to change this to DHT11, and I'm using GPIO4. So from D18 I'm going to change this to D4. So you can leave everything else as default, and with that we're good to go. So I'm going to save this and I'm going to run it. So you can call it DHT simple test.py. If you run this by clicking on run, you're going to be seeing your temperature and humidity. But I discovered there's a problem with this. If you run it for the first time, it's going to work perfectly. Whenever you reboot your Raspberry Pi, it's going to work perfectly. But if you try to run it again, it might not work again. So what you just need to do is to uncomment this particular line 14, and again change this to DHT11 and change this to D4. So whenever you are running your code, it's going to run perfectly. So to run this, I'm going to click on run. So here we have temperature and humidity coming in. I have my temperature is 86.0 degree Fahrenheit and my humidity. So this is how you can read humidity and temperature data from DHT11 sensor. Again, I can read this from the terminal. So if I open my terminal, I'll just clear this and change directory to document where I saved it. So I have my I'll just check where I saved this. So it's my root directory. So I'm going to change. So I have DHT simple test.py. So to run it, I can just type Python 3 DHT simple test.py. And also on the terminal, I have my temperature and humidity coming in. So that's how you can set up your Raspberry Pi to read DHT11 sensor data. So now we have done the two most important things that we need to do to set up our Raspberry Pi. So you set up our Raspberry Pi to run Thingsboard Cloud local server, and we have set up our Raspberry Pi to read DHT11 sensor data. So the next thing we have to do is to send that data that is being read from DHT11 to our local Thingsboard server. So now you can also disconnect your internet connectivity now, since you have already set up everything. So now we are going to be creating a device, and we are going to be giving it a name, and we're going to be writing a code to send data to that device. So to create, you can come to devices here, or you can simply use this panel and come to devices. So click on under device management, click on devices. So we are going to be creating a device. So depending on your solution requirements, you might have to create a lot of devices, and that's how we have 3 different login for Thingsboard, which is the admin, the tenant, and the customer. So we are a tenant, so we can create different devices. Let's say in the factory you have a lot of things to monitor, so you can create different devices to monitor different points. So I'm going to be creating a simple device here, add new device. Since I'm reading just temperature and humidity data, I've just called it weather monitor. So I'm calling my device weather monitor. Probably I'm using this to monitor the engine room. So this can be anything depending on your application. So click on next. This is not a gateway device, so we're going to click on next and add credentials. So under access to make sure this is selected as access token, so you can just type in whatever you want to be your access tokens, like a password to your device. Most of the time you can use a token generator or a key generator for this, but here I'm just going to make this as simple as possible I'll just give it DHT 11 sensor. And once you're done, you can just copy it because we're going to be using it in our code. So I copy this. So the access token, don't forget, it's like the password, so you can make it as complicated as possible. So next, click on customer, and we are not assigning this device to any customer. So let's just click on add. So as you can see here, we have the device listed here. The name is weather monitor, and the label is engine room device. So if you click on this device, so you have the details shown here. So the attribute, the latest telemetry. Once you start sending data, the telemetry will be shown here. And under this, you can also copy the access token here, or you can copy the device ID. So, but I'm going to copy the access token. So now we are going to be modifying the code to read our DHT11 sensor data to send that data to the Thingsboard cloud. And here I have the code. If you check through the code, you see I've edited some things and also I've added some things. So the major thing that you have to add is the Thingsboard host and also the access token. You can see my host is no longer cloud.thingsboard.io but localhost. Make sure it's only localhost. Don't put HTTP localhost. So make sure it's only localhost, and also make sure your access token is correct with what you input while creating the device. Also, if you check here, so this way I'm taking my humidity and temperature data, and if you want to do any form of editing, you want to send your own data, so this is where you have to edit. Make sure this is your own data that you want to send, and here I'm rounding it off to 2 decimal places. So this is just to print it to the console, and here I'm changing it into a JSON format, and here I'm publishing it. So if you can edit this, you'll be able to send your own customized data to Thingsboard local server. So now I'm going to run this. So I have my temperature 28 degrees Celsius and humidity 80%. So to view this, I've simply come back to my web browser, and you see here under my weather monitor, I have latest telemetry here. You have the humidity and also the temperature. So now the next thing we want to do is to create a dashboard and widget where we can visualize the data. Don't forget, it's going to be sending the last two. We're going to be seeing the last value sent here. So to create a widget in form of dashboard for this data, so just click on this checkbox and click on show on widget. So we have different widget type that we can use. We can use charts, we can use anything, but since the first thing we are selecting is our temperature, so I'm going to be displaying it in an analog gauge. So select analog gauge, and I think this is okay. So I've selected this, which is temperature analog gauge. So I'll click on add to dashboard. So yeah, we're going to be creating a new dashboard since there's no any dashboard available. So click on create a new dashboard, and we can call it weather monitor, and click on add. So we've added this. So again, oh, that was humidity actually. So again, we're going to be adding for temperature. You can always change the chart type to anything you like. So click on show on widgets. So this is our temperature. I'll still be using the analog gauge. So the former one was for humidity. It was supposed to be temperature. I think I'll just use this for my temperature. You can see you have a lot of options to choose from here. Just choose whatever suits your conditions. So click on add to dashboard, and now since we already have a dashboard created, we just select existing dashboard, and that is weather station. So click on add. So we've added 2 devices, the 2 sensors to our dashboard. So to view this, we just simply have to come to our dashboard, click on dashboard, and dashboard will create this called weather monitor, and click on this. So you have the options of our dashboard here. So to open it, you can just simply click on open dashboard. So and then we have put our temperature, and this is supposed to be, this is the humidity and this is the temperature. This is the humidity and this is the temperature. So and that's simply how we can send data from our DHT11 sensor data to Thingsboard. In this tutorial, you've seen how you can set up Thingsboard Cloud local server on your Raspberry Pi. You saw how you can read the DHT11 sensor data on the Raspberry Pi, and now you can send the data to Thingsboard local server. In previous tutorials, I looked at how to send data from DHT11 sensor data through your Raspberry Pi to the Thingsboard Cloud. So there you are going to need internet connectivity, but for this you don't need internet connectivity since you are running it locally on your Raspberry Pi. And this has a lot of applications. Let's say in a small factory where you might want to use this, and all the sensors are joined together. Once they are on the same network, you can just set up a central database for them, and they all can report to that without needing internet connection. But if you want to monitor different devices across the world, then you are going to need internet connectivity. But for a local setup, you can simply use Thingsboard local server to monitor your IoT devices. So that's it basically on how to set up your Raspberry Pi to send data to Thingsboard local server. Next tutorial, I don't know, but I think I'll be looking at tutorials on how to configure your ESP8266, which is your node MCU, to work with Thingsboard local server and also to work with Thingsboard Cloud. So that's it basically, guys, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Don't forget, before you go, to subscribe and also give it a thumbs up if you find this tutorial helpful at all. It's very important for me. It makes a lot of difference. So thank you very much, and again, I'm going to see you in the next tutorial.